Have you ever looked into a mirror and thought, for just a second, that something wasn't quite right? Maybe it was the way your reflection seemed to pause or move just a fraction of a second too late. That gut feeling that something's watching you. But when you look away, the reflection still stays in the corner of your eye? I used to think that kind of thing was just superstition. A silly thought that crossed your mind when you were alone at night. But after what happened to me, I'm not so sure anymore. It all started innocently enough. I was living in this old apartment. You know the kind. Creaky floors, peeling paint on the walls, and that feeling that it has seen too many lives pass through it. But it was cheap, and I needed a place, so I took it. There was this one bathroom in the apartment that always gave me a weird vibe. It had a big antique mirror above the sink, framed in dark wood. The glass was cracked at the edges and it looked like it had been there for years. I always avoided looking into it, but it wasn't for any particular reason. I just didn't like the way it made me feel. One night, I was getting ready for bed, brushing my teeth when I glanced up into the mirror. And that's when I saw him. At first, it was barely noticeable, just a shadow in the corner of my vision. I thought it was my tired eyes, but when I looked directly at the mirror, the shadow moved. It wasn't my reflection. Standing just behind me, right in the reflection, was a man I had never seen before. His skin was pale, almost as if he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes were wide open, black as coal, and staring at me with an intensity that made my blood run cold. He wasn't smiling, but his expression was unsettling, like he knew something I didn't. I didn't even move. I just froze, staring at him through the glass, my mind racing. Who was he? Why was he there? I looked around the bathroom. No one else was there. I looked back at the mirror. He was still there. My heart thudded in my chest, my breath catching in my throat. The longer I stared at him, the more it felt like I was sinking into the reflection, like it was pulling me in. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, he was gone. My reflection was back to normal, standing there alone, like nothing had happened. I tried to tell myself I was just tired, imagining things, that I needed rest. So I left the bathroom, brushed it off, and went to bed. But over the next few days, something changed. The unease grew. At first, it was little things, subtle, almost imperceptible. I'd walk past the bathroom and the mirror would catch my eye. I'd see my reflection in the corner of my vision, and sometimes, just sometimes, I thought it wasn't moving the way it should. A second too slow. A blink too late. One night, I was in the bathroom again, washing my hands. The air felt heavy, thick. The light flickered above me. I looked up into the mirror, and there he was again, the man. But this time, something was different. He was smiling. At first, it was just a slight curl of his lips, almost like he was trying to hide a grin. But as I stared, it stretched wider. Too wide. His teeth, yellowed and jagged, glistened in the reflection. He leaned in closer, his face coming towards the glass, his eyes still locked on mine. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. It was like I was trapped in the mirror, my body paralyzed with fear. "Let me out," he whispered. His voice was soft, like a breeze, but it was chilling. A sound that cut through the silence and wrapped itself around my thoughts. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. I stumbled backwards, my heart pounding. I felt the air around me get colder. The reflection in the mirror didn't follow my movements exactly. It lagged, moving slightly out of sync, like it had a life of its own. I slammed the bathroom door shut and backed away. My breath came out in ragged gasps as I stood there, my mind racing. What the hell was happening? I told myself it was just my imagination. But the next day, the whispers started. Faint at first. Just little things, almost too soft to hear. But they grew louder as the days passed. Sometimes I'd hear them when I was alone in my apartment. Whispers coming from the direction of the bathroom. And every time I passed by, I felt a pull toward the mirror. A strange urge to look inside, to see if he was there again. The whispers were always the same, always calling my name. And no matter how many times I told myself I was being paranoid, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I went into the bathroom, covered the mirror with a cloth, and locked the door. I thought that maybe if I just didn't look at it, maybe if I just ignored it, things would stop. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, like they were right next to me, calling to me. Then, the knocking started. It was soft at first, barely audible. But then it became louder, more desperate. Knock, knock, knock. It sounded like it was coming from behind the bathroom door. I was terrified. What was happening? Was it just my mind? Or was something truly wrong? That night, I tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I felt the presence of the man. Like he was standing just behind me, waiting for me to open my eyes again. And I couldn't escape the feeling that he was getting closer, inching his way toward me. The next morning, I decided I had to get rid of the mirror. I couldn't take it anymore. So I grabbed it, wrapped it up in the cloth, and dragged it out of the apartment. I threw it into the trash, hoping that would be the end of it. But when I returned home that night, something was wrong. I walked into my apartment, and there, sitting on the living room floor, was the mirror. It was as if it had never been thrown away at all. The same old cracked frame, the same dark glass. I froze. My stomach dropped. I couldn't help myself. I walked toward it. The reflection stared back at me, but then something shifted. It wasn't me staring back. It was him. The man. His hollow eyes locked onto mine, and in the reflection I saw him reach out, his fingers pressing against the glass. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Now, it's your turn." Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I don't know how much time passed or what happened after that. But the next morning, I woke up in my bed, the mirror gone again, as if nothing had ever happened. I still don't know if it was real or if I imagined it all. But every night when I close my eyes, I hear the whispers again. And I know he's still out there, waiting, watching. And I can't help but wonder, is it possible that he's still trapped in the glass? Or could he be watching me from the other side, waiting for me to come back to the mirror? I think about it every time I walk past a reflective surface. And I'll never look in the mirror the same way again. Because the thing about mirrors is, sometimes what's reflected is not what you think it is. Sometimes there's something else in there. Something waiting, watching, ready to reach out.